All right. So today we're talking about one couple's journey from being the day-to-day operators of a cafe business in a big city to being wealth planners for small business owners. And we're going to talk about some of the particular challenges that small business owners have when it comes to navigating the world of financial advice. And we're going to talk about how some of the financial tools that these two have used actually help them in their very own cafe business. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking all about it right now. I'm David C. Barnett, and you're tuned in to Small Business and Deal Making, the podcast, YouTube channel, and blog where I talk about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium sized businesses while controlling risk. So, if you're looking to take control of your future through buying a business one day, or if you already own a business and you're looking to grow or exit, you've come to the right place. I talk about interesting things, I talk to interesting people, and I answer your questions every week right here. So, be sure to hit like and be sure to hit subscribe, and let's get to it. Are you thinking of growing your business or beginning a journey into entrepreneurship? Take a shortcut to success by buying an existing and profitable business the right way. Visit businessbuyeradvantage.com and learn more about my online training, group coaching, and consulting services designed to help you win. All right, so today I'm happy to be joined by the Neelys. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, David. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
We're in two different rooms, but we do work together, or two different
awesome.
spaces right now.
Well, I love to talk to business owners and talk about their experiences and your story. For the purpose of this conversation, is we're going to start things at the coffee shop that you own together. But I want to take it just one step back further than that. Um, can you tell me a little bit about the ambition or the dreams or the desires that got you guys to the point where you decided that was a business that you wanted to be in, and then made that decision to get into food service cafe space?
Yeah, I'll start first. Is it kind of was we were faith-based people. We wanted to make a difference in the world, and I grew up on Cheers, right? So the show Cheers, and saying, hey, how do we create a space that people can come into? And this idea of not just oppressing people, but how do I produce my values in the economy? So ethical economics was a big deal, and community building was a big deal. And I gave this idea to Amanda. I'm the what do you call it? The guy that has all the crazy ideas, and Amanda has to figure it out typically. And came up with this idea, and she's like, "Oh yeah, how are we going to make this happen?" And I think it was in 2008, which isn't the best time to start a business anyway, but that's when we started stepping into that business.
Well, tell me a little bit about that. So, so were you looking into like your suppliers and where your inputs were coming from and all that kind of thing to try to make sure you having a positive social impact? Maybe something like what a B Corp, one of those certified B Corps might be interested in. Was that kind of an inspiration for you?
Yeah, and then we ended up, there's a business entity structure called the L3C, a low profit limited liability company. We became the 11th in the state of Illinois. And one of the first ones that actually had a physical location. Most of them were like, consultants, people working in their homes, things like that. And so we actually became a hub for social enterprise and, business with mission in the city that we were in. It was pretty fun.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. And so how did it go? Because I've heard that coffee has really high gross margins.
We went into it thinking, oh, it's going to be amazing. We're in the city of Chicago. It's going to be, everybody's going to come. Now, most people, when they start businesses, they think it's going to be easy up and to the right. They wouldn't go into business
I've
if
seen that
they,
graph. I've
yeah,
seen
yeah.
that graph.
Yeah, it's always that way. That right, and we think that it's going to be easy, right? Just have the idea, and people will come. Well, that's not always the way it works, and so we learned. However, I don't think we would have started had we not had that idealism in us to step into it. Now, we did make a difference. That was our driving force, not revenue, not money. It was making a difference. We were last to get paid. The farmers probably got paid more than us, which is kind of sad. but we really wanted to live with integrity, and that's what we continue to do today. But that's why we went into it, and it was a great business that I'm glad I don't do now.
Can you give us an idea of the magnitude of the operation? Like how many employees did you have? How many seats, or how big was the square footage of your location? Like things like that.
Yeah, one of the things we had to our advantage was that we were in kind of the lobby or the foyer of a larger building that was a community center and a K through 8 private school.
Okay.
So, and then like across the street where, like a doctor's office, things like that. And teachers and medical professionals are some of the largest purchasers of coffee. Like they just consume the most caffeine. So we had and college students close by too, which is helpful. So we would have anywhere from 5 to 10 employees, 10 if they were mostly college students working part time, 5 if we had some full time people, not including us. And then the lobby area was actually pretty big. Lots of seats. So we'd actually have people that would come. We could tell they were just buying a cup of coffee because they could have a conversation and that we were like the only human that they would talk to that day.
Mhm.
Well, so after having gone through this experience, what do you think were some of the biggest ahas or surprises of what you thought it was going to be like versus what it really was like?
We thought we were going to have higher sales, that's for sure. And it was going to be like easier to get like that above like $600 a day, for example. That was a lot more challenging. We learned how to say, would you like a sandwich with that? And upsell. And then a lot of other things about business, like selling not just the coffee, but what can we sell that is a bigger thing to increase our average sale price. Those are things we learned. We also met our now mentor and friend, Mark, there, and through the non financial goals, we made those relational goals that helped us to overcome some obstacles. So one example, we wanted to do some adjustments or some other things to the space. We didn't have all the revenue money in the world. We didn't have a rich relative to help us. But our community, we said, if you want outdoor seating, it needs to come from us as a community. And so we did a fundraiser and made money to buy outdoor seating. That was
Yeah,
fun.
like people purchase like a membership that they would get 10% off for the rest of the year, and we'd use that membership money to add outdoor seating that coming year, right? And purchase the permit and the materials for that. And people were happy to do it because they wanted to sit outside with their dog or whatever it was when they came.
And I bet they really felt a sense of ownership in the
Mhm.
business having participated in that way.
Yeah. I think
Absolutely.
Yeah.
your co-author Mark is how we met through him. He actually had an office there, so he'd meet his clients there, and I just thought of him as the financial guy that I'm gonna. He sent me a couple emails. I avoided them and said you need to talk to my wife, and then she's like, I'm too busy. But it was because of that relationship that we're here. But it was all because we had a place for him to even work. I had a co-office with his assistant actually. That's how we were creative in our business ventures to figure out how do we make this happen, and he was doing the same thing.
Yeah, and for those who are just tuning in and don't know, the new book, The Business Fortress, just came out that I wrote with Mark Willis, and I had the good fortune of meeting the both of you when I was recently in Michigan, where I met Mark and the rest of the Bank on Yourself people that happened to be there. Of course, Mark's been a longtime sponsor of this YouTube
Mhm.
channel. I've known him for quite a few years. And so this is how you got to know him, is his office was there, and you got to know him and eventually shared a little bit of office space with his assistant. Is that right?
Yeah, I think he was maybe 3 years into the business when he met us, and maybe two. I don't know. It was 2 years into the business, and then we had watched this documentary that kind of led us into our next phase. But that documentary that he was a speaker at really just blew our minds. And
So But before we get into the change and why you are no longer the owner of the cafe today, can you tell me what you see when you walk into a coffee shop today? Like if you walked into a Starbucks, how are
We
your
wouldn't
eyes
we
different
we would never
than
walk
than the
into
okay, well, if you walked into a specialty coffee place, how is your perception different? What is it that you look at that maybe the average person doesn't see?
I would say definitely the customer service, right? Are people greeted immediately? Are they just, "Can I take your order?" Or do they wanna go deeper, right? Like, that was a big reason as a local independent shop, that's what set us apart from the chains that were close by, is we were in lived in the community, we wanted to get to know people, help them get to know one another, and then looking around, right, seeing if people are connecting or if everyone's kind of in their laptops, not talking to each other. That's actually, there's a book called Everything But the Coffee that talks about how we call it star schmucks, how they set up their stores so that people would feel connected without actually connecting. Like they have round tables
Interesting.
because that makes you feel connected to people without actually having to talk to them if you just sit at a round table, and all these like, things that they did to kind of manipulate people to feeling like they're a part of a third place when they didn't actually get to know anyone. And so we kind of look for like, what shape are the tables, what, are people mixing and mingling and talking to one another, is everyone kind of in their own zone, is there anything here to foster like events that are going to be happening that evening, or those kind of things. That's actually, I think, what creates a unique proposition, a USP, a unique selling proposition within a locally rooted, independent third place, whether it be a wine bar or a
Mhm.
coffee shop or whatever it might be. So we're always looking for those kind of places because we want to support our own community, shop local, and we want to find places where we can actually connect with people, not just live in our silos and only, live on social media and that kind of stuff.
Okay. So and today is the cafe open?
Yes, we sold it to a nonprofit actually because they wanted to continue the social mission and actually continue to expand it. And they're now open in a different location. They had to move locations. We could talk about landlord problems, but yeah, they're continuing to support those coffee farmers, the blueberry growers in Michigan that would be making the muffins, right? All those kind of things too.
Okay. And so let's talk then about your evolution because you guys don't own it anymore. You guys are now doing something completely different. You're doing financial planning, wealth planning, retirement type of work with entrepreneurs. Can you talk about what led you from the cafe over into that world?
Yeah, I could share a little bit about that. So, one is when you don't own the real estate and someone else does, then you aren't in control of your own destiny, right? So, when you're a brick and mortar business, you want a long lease, 5-year lease, or in Guinness language, if you ever heard of the Guinness story, they have a really long, really, really long lease.
Is it
Like,
1,000 years or something?
yeah, yeah, something
Yeah.
huge. He was thinking long range. Um, a lot of people don't, right? And so year to year lease, there was a change in leadership that was making it not healthy for us, and always the they say the lead last to get paid, right? And so what kind of led it to us is one of my friends in the coffee shop would always ask, "What's your number?" And I remember where we had a big event that happened. The the floor the store we were off, and there was having some work on the roof, right? And they took off the roof, and then it rained. Now I don't know if you know this, but having a roof on your house is really important.
Yeah,
Having
it's a critical system of any building, I
Yes.
gather.
We don't
Yeah.
really notice it until it's gone. Well, it was gone, and my staff called me. I'm on the treadmill, trying to get my steps. They called me. I ignored it. Then they called Amanda. I was like, "We should pick it up," because they're calling both of us. So we answered, and they said, "You need to come in. The store is falling apart." I was like, he's just joking. It's not that big a deal." Shows a video, and we're like, "Holy crap." So we book it, to the place, right? And then we come in and we're in like a couple inches of water, right? And this is like one of
So
they
it was accumulating on your floor.
yes, and
Yeah.
all
Okay.
over the equipment, all over everything. It was like a hurricane. And I've experienced hurricanes, and I'm like, this is bad. And so
And this is water that's run through like insulation and through the floorboards and everything. So it's not clean. It's like it. I can understand what you're saying. It's like one
yes,
of those terrible storms. It's
yeah,
everything's dirty and filthy. Yeah.
yep. So we're coming in, we're crying, and you see the store is gone. We're like, what are we gonna do? We have to close. So um, then we found out as well. We closed the store. Found out that Amanda, I think a month later, was pregnant. Right? We didn't know at the time. Um, while she's walking through the water, they said it's not safe. We're like, oh, we've been through hurricanes. It's going to be fine. I didn't know she was pregnant. We would have not made her walk around the water. I don't know, something. Um, but that happened, and we used our life insurance, which is what we do now, to overcome the flood, to be able to pay staff, payroll, do all the things, and wait for insurance to come in to get back to normal, right?
So there was coverage, either your own insurance or maybe the contractors or the building owners. In some way, ultimately, there was going to be an insurance payout
Yeah,
to help rebuild and everything. But of course, that takes time, right?
Yeah.
yep.
Yep.
So we used our
Yeah.
policies to overcome that time, get back, and then this friend he would ask me that question, and this is just after we found out we're pregnant, and he would ask me, what's your number? And I was kind of frustrated with everything. And I asked him, what's your number? Which is not the best way to do business valuation. Just so you know,
Oh,
don't
so
start.
he was asking what you would sell the cafe for.
I asked
Yeah.
him later afterwards and said, what would you buy it for? And that's probably not the best way to start a negotiation. But we were like, all right, we're gonna have a baby. We need to switch. We need to do something. And so we sold it, and then I think they got kicked out or something right after.
You're getting ahead of the story. Um, so we have the flood. We recover from that without going into severe debt. We show the business can recover from something. Then a few weeks later, found out I'm pregnant. We started exploring options. I actually talked to a business broker. They looked at that we had a year-to-year lease at that point. They said you could never sell this because they could
Right.
get kicked out, right? Like just wasn't going to work. So as we're exploring options, Brandon went back to this, guy that had been asking, "What's your number?" and said, "Well, what's your number?" And we kept going down that path, and we kept sensing like the way that we wanted to be as a family with a little one coming along was not the way that we could run the business in the same way. And it turned out like we ended up selling the business, and then on our son's first birthday was the day that they had to relocate the people that we sold the business to. And we can only imagine if we had had to be
Yeah.
doing that on our son's first birthday, that would have been no fun whatsoever. So
Yeah,
we count our blessings many days of that we were spared from that because we had options, and because not only we had shown that could get through a flood in the business and that closure without piling up credit card debt or going to grovel to a bank because we had our own funding, but that the business could actually pay us to have that own funding, right? Then this nonprofit who wouldn't want to take on something that's going to leach their,
mhm,
donations and stuff like that, they could actually pay a manager, even have money to support their nonprofit where it continued to expand. We had not only adopted the bank on yourself strategy, but we had also started using profit first and had managed our cash flow that way to make sure that we were paid the first of the month, not the last of the month. We were paid a steady salary, plenty to pay somebody to replace us. All those factors came in to make it a no-brainer for this nonprofit to buy it, even though they could have to relocate. But with their 20-year track record, that'd be much easier for them to relocate.
Yeah. So I just want to backtrack a little bit here. So the insurance policy you used to get money to help you through this struggle. This was a bank on yourself style life insurance policy. It's a whole life policy with added money going in to build the cash value quickly, and basically it becomes this equity asset that is liquid that you can always leverage all the time. So that's why you could immediately get access to cash to help you through the stressful period. Profit first, and we've had profit first people on the show here before, which is a kind of a pay yourself first sort of methodology, but designed for business people, right? And so, what I found interesting when I got to know you guys in Michigan was that you've kind of built all of these different certifications. You've gone through all these different programs specifically to work with business owners who are trying to make more money with their business and better plan their wealth, their resources, their retirement, etc. So was that the plan when you started, or were you just looking for solutions to better run your own business that led you to all of these different things?
Yeah, so just like when the vision for the coffee shop, we knew we wanted to do coffee because we had learned, the millions of coffee farmers that live on $1 a day, then and how we could change as consumers, and we had changed how we purchase coffee and what coffee shops we go to, and that's part of what led us to start the coffee shop. So then, so we opened our doors officially in 2011. We met Mark Willis in 2013, started our first bank on yourself type policies that year, started Profit First in 2014. This was 2018 when we had used Bank on Yourself and Profit First to successfully pay off all of our personal debt and business debt. We were the only debt we owed was to ourselves when that flood happened. We were in a much more stable position. And when we started thinking, okay, like we're selling this business, what are we going to do next? We knew we were
Yeah,
unemployable, right? We can't, no one's going to hire us anymore. We've been entrepreneurs for too long, right? 7 years of having this business open. We thought like, well, coffee totally changed our lives. That's why we did that. What's changed our lives most recently and been so good for us that we could make a new business around? And so we actually took Mark on as a mentor and
Well,
said, teach us how to do what you did for us for other people.
I would add a little bit of color to that.
Okay.
Is as we sold, Amanda's like, "Well, you need to go get a job because I'm pregnant," and I was like, "I'm not employable. I don't know how am I gonna do this?" And so I interviewed with Mark, and he said, "No, you're too entrepreneurial. I can't hire you." And then I think a month or so later, he comes back. And had the genius idea with his wife to have Amanda and I do this together as business partners. And I was like, that's even better because we work together. We've worked together for pretty well.
yeah.
And she'll make sure I'm not going into compliance or jail from not saying the wrong thing. Um, and so we started doing this together. And so it wasn't just me, it was both of us with a baby on the way.
Okay. And so when you sit down with someone who owns a business, what do those conversations typically look like? Like, where do you start? Is it with talking about the business that they have and maybe how it could function better, or is it talking about, their goals? Like, what does it typically look like?
I would say we first ask them, and it's both of them, that whole song, "Tell me what you want, what you really, really want." We start asking, "What are your goals? Like, what do you want? Like,
Mm,
why did you start this?" And then back into that, right? Because a lot of times people didn't just get into business to have a business, they got into it for financial freedom, right? And then they end up creating a job. And so those are things that we start asking first, and then we'll back end to the policies or profit first or other things. But that's ultimately we need to diagnose what do they want in life.
and do you find that most people are able to articulate it well?
No, I think a lot of people don't know themselves or even their spouses, and they ask, um, "That's a great question. I haven't really thought about that." And I'm like, "This is date night conversations." And I think that oftentimes we just think, well, if I buy this business or if I do this thing, then I'll be here. And they've never really asked those core things of what do I want, and that's part of why we wrote our book, the Five Smooth Stones book, is asking, well, what do you want first? And then you reverse engineer it to that.
I My own theory is that people get into business, either they start a business, a lot of people start a business, or maybe they'll buy a business or inherit a business or what have you. They'll get into business and there will be some kind of business plan, usually geared around growing the business to the point where they then can like live off of the income. And then there's that moment where you're like, okay, now I've done it. I'm now earning the income I always wanted. I'm now a successful business owner. And then that's the end. Then it's just like every day is just going back in the shop, back in the shop, back in the shop. They just keep running it, running it, running it. And if there's a problem that occurs, if sales go down or earnings go down or a catastrophe like what you went through, then people kind of scramble to make these short-term tactical plans. But I've talked with an awful lot of people who were in their 60s and 70s and still couldn't answer the question that you're asking. What do you want? Because they spend their days in the business and they work there and that's what they're doing.
Oh, I mean, I was about to say something. She's got all kinds of wisdom.
Yeah, so there's also they I think they do have a sense of they want to get out of the day-to-day management, have it be more, passive in terms of income, hand off, management of employees or have assistants or those kind of things. They just don't know how, and or a lot of times to get to where they've gotten, they've taken on a lot of debt, right? An EIDL loan and an SBA loan and maybe a line of credit on their house, right? Like all these things. And they're, especially if they're younger, they're juggling all these debt payments that they
Yeah.
feel there's no way out. They can't make those strategic moves um, to hand off, uh, things that they should delegate, right? $10 an hour type of work because they don't have the money. They have to pay themselves so they can support their families or whatever it might be. But they also have to pay all these debts, and that just feels like a trap then when it's not the freedom. And I think they kind of know, like, I know I want freedom, right? I know I want more time freedom, ability to travel, do these things, but they don't know how to get there. Like they don't know what they want to do to get there, right? Like, and how what that looks like. And that's actually one of the funnest things. I'm a little bit of a problem solver. If you put a problem in front of me, I will do whatever I can to solve it. Right? Somebody this morning gave me an idea and I can't stop thinking about it. I want to, figure out what is this idea going to look like. And even though it's not something I have to do today, it's still running through my head. And so I think what's really interesting about, and I love the business fortress. I saw a lot of profit first within there, different things that really align well with it, is that what a lot of people don't realize is to get the freedom, there are these small adjustments that they can make. Things like, examples you make of changing when accounts receivable are, or letting people pay by credit card instead of 30 days and only by check, or, those kind of things that help with that cash flow management that then get them the ability to fund life insurance policies to become their own source of financing rather than keep depending. And they can't see what they want or how to get to what they want until they see some of those things happen, like those initial dominoes happen, right? And then they're like, oh, now I can picture it, and let's run after it. And that's so much fun to give like people those early wins, and then just then paint the picture of, okay, here's where this actually takes you long term if you keep going in that direction. um, and that's like the biggest thing we should probably say, when a business owner usually sits down with a financial advisor, the financial advisor has no clue what to do with their business and how to factor that into their retirement planning or any college funding for their kids or any of that. The business just kind of,
Well,
let's set that aside.
let's tackle it in a
Yeah.
minute here, but I just want to ask you a couple questions. So number one, what do most of the businesses look like that are owned by the people that you're working with? Like, can you give us like some industries, size of businesses, just so we get an idea of who typically you're talking to?
Yeah. So they're usually locally rooted businesses, whether it be a doctor's office where they see patients in person, or something that's in the landscaping or home improvement, garage doors, that kind of situation. And then of course a lot of real estate business, short-term rentals, long-term rentals, those kind of things. And it's usually smaller businesses, sometimes a solopreneur like with real estate, or 2 or 3 5-person team, and some of the others as typically who we're talking to.
We
Okay.
did have a lot of Amazon resellers too at one point. I think
Okay.
that's changed a lot because,
It kind of went through a big hump. Like
Yeah.
there was really popular for a while, and I think some of those people ended up having a bit of trouble.
Mhm.
yep, yep,
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of those, they do have pretty high cost of goods sold or contractor commissions and fees and stuff that they actually their real revenue is way lower than their gross revenue.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and um, so when you mentioned most financial planners don't know what to do with the business. They most financial planners probably say, okay, well, how can I conceptualize this business owner as though they were an employee? They might ask questions like, well, how much money can you afford to put into an investment mechanism of some kind every month?
Yep.
Just because they don't want to look in the business, and they just want to work from that number, which is easier for an employee to give because an employee can, they know their income, they can create a budget for their household, and they know what they can save or whatever. And so tell us a little bit about that conversation. How deeply into the business are you guys diving? Because with your experience, obviously, you're seeing some of the stuff that I talked about in the Business Fortress.
Yeah. So especially if they have a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement that they can send us either from last year or year to date or hopefully both, we can get a pretty good idea of if the business is going well or not, right? Um, and because we're also profit first professionals, we have tools that we can put together to say, like, okay, here's kind of current allocations, how things are going with how much you're paying yourself, how your, how much your profit is. What kind of tax liability you have. If you actually went all in with profit first, here's what it would look like then, and kind of giving people that dream of, well, if you had the same top line revenue, but you made these little adjustments in your um, materials and subcontractors or within your OPEX, or you were able to pay Uncle Sam without having to worry about it every April or, whatever it is in Canada, right? Then you'd have the freedom to pay yourself this. And what would change about your personal life if you could
yep,
pay yourself this? And it gets there through small micro adjustments, 1 to 3% per quarter. It's not like you're going to get there overnight, but then
Yeah.
once you get to this as your owner's compensation with maybe some profit distributions on top of that, then here's how much you can set aside for the future, for the medium term future, the long term future. You can put it in a place where it can grow uninterrupted. And if you have a special opportunity in your business, you can borrow from that place to fund a special opportunity or to get through a flood or whatever it might be, to then increase your real revenue, to then increase how much you pay yourself and create this very virtuous, you know, um, self compounding system,
Yeah.
ecosystem
Well,
that you can do all kinds of things from there.
we definitely see here the results of people who do not go through a process like that, because it's very frequent or very often that we will look at a business that someone wants to put up for sale. So this is now a person that's later in life, and they'll get us to do an evaluation, what we call a most probable selling price evaluation, and we'll show them some benchmarking statistics. For some industries, we're able to benchmark the businesses, and we'll show somebody, hey, your gross margin is 27 points, but your industry average is 33. And so that means either you're spending too much on your inputs or your prices aren't high enough. And usually they know immediately. They'll be like, yeah, we're kind of slow at raising our prices. We'll go, well, great. But if those 6 points went from if they were there in the gross profit and they fell right to the bottom line, that would almost double your free cash flow, and that would increase the value of your business. Here's what your business could be worth if it was actually running properly. And those results sometimes shock people, and then they get frustrated and angry because they realize that if they had been managing it properly for the 10 years coming up to the meeting with us, they would have had all that extra money,
yep,
right? And if they've got time, but we will usually say to people, like, you need to fix it and then get 2 years of financial statements so that you can show a buyer that this is the normal everyday performance of the business now when we're getting the proper margins and all that kind of stuff. And so for a lot of those people, then you start talking about a 3 4 5 year timeline to get it fixed and properly valued with a reasonable track record to show someone. And then the question is, do they really want to spend 5 years there? And this one is very unfortunate, but then you get some people who are like, no, I'm done. and they end up exiting, and they've kind of shortchanged themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's
Yeah.
my favorite question, David. Um, if you aren't selling your business today, you're buying your business today.
It's like
And
that with
would you
anything.
buy it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
if not, like, what do we need to do to make it that you're excited to buy it every single day?
Let's talk about the different retirement vehicles or investing vehicles because for those of you who've been watching my show for a long time, at the end of every show there's an advertisement there for Mark Willis. And if you go over to newbankingsolution.com, there's all the videos where Mark has been on my show, and we talk about the bank on yourself style life insurance policies. And there's a lot of people out there who will say life insurance is not a good way to invest for retirement or save for retirement or what have you. And I mean, there are mutual funds or stocks. You can buy bars of gold. You can have high interest savings accounts. You can do all kinds of things. You can invest in real estate. And so there's a lot of advice out there. And of course, the biggest part of the retirement industry is focused on those people that are employees, right? Who can say, I can give this amount of money. Can you talk about why the needs of business owners are different than employees? Why they need to maybe take a second look at the tool set or the vehicles that they might be that are being promoted to them.
I can go with a little bit first, and then Amanda can go all technical because she's the CFP here. And I would say to every business owner, your biggest risk and your biggest investment is you as the business owner, right? And so you, at the very least, need to protect the biggest risk. And so that's why we became policyholders, is because we were the biggest risk, but we still wanted to have it doing something to be able to use if we need to, right? Because why would I divest from my business into General Motors or something else that is, it may be a direct competitor, but they they're in the market, So we're told to put into other people's businesses and not our own. And so in essence, life insurance is to protect from that risk, to protect the cash machine, which is us. Now, whether it's term versus whole life, that's a different story. But at the very least, put something in place. That's why Keyman Insurance and those kind of things exist. And you can have very different products for the size of the business.
And what I would add to this is I think the big aha for me was realizing I am very risk averse, actually, especially with my money. I'll be like I'll give people my time, right? I know I'll never get that back, but I will, I'm fine with wasting time on people and to share love and concern for them. But I'm not gonna, risk my money. And it was a big aha moment for me. Like, having my net worth in a business is hugely risky, right? I own
Mm,
100% stock in that business, right? And if it goes under, there goes my net worth. And so to have something that counterbalanced that risk, that was safe, secure, able to keep growing, that I could count on being there if something happened to the business or if something just happened to the economy overall and all businesses are closing, those kind of things. That helped me sleep better at night, helped me worry less. And then also knowing if on the flip side, things were really great with that business and we decided to franchise or, diversify, buy another type of business down the street that, right, like we could do that with our funds without all the red tape and the penalties and the hoops to jump through that if it had been in an IRA or 401k, we'd have to do. Um,
yeah. In traditional retirement vehicles, the money gets locked away in some way. You've got big penalties and stuff to get it back out. With this vehicle, I mean, you're reiterating the reasons why I bought it too.
yeah.
'Cause I mean, I
Mhm.
hold a policy, a couple policies like this. And so it's basically you put the money in, the money's available to take back out if you ever need to without having to jump through any hoops or qualify for credit. So it's even better than like equity in a building, for example. It always goes up in value. It is safe. Once dividends are issued to grow the value, it can never go down in value. So it's always ratcheting up over time.
Mm-hmm.
And if I die, like my heirs get the big windfall of benefiting from all of that. here in Canada, if you use the RRSP, which is kind of like the 401k, and you die, it's assumed that all that money comes out like at one time in the hands of the deceased. And so if they have like $500,000 in there, all of a sudden you have a $500,000 income year. You can imagine that puts you well into the highest tax brackets. And so the government profits, not your heirs, right? And so, but what you're saying about risk really resonates. Back in March, I was at uh, a fire conference, so it's Financial Independence Retire Early, and a lot of people there are putting like all their money into like index funds in the market. And to what you're saying about risk, when I would talk with a lot of those people and say, like, aren't you worried that this is kind of risky? A lot of them were saying, no, I don't think it's too risky. And I would ask them more and more questions and find out they had super secure jobs. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's that balance, right? Like if your paycheck is really secure, you don't mind taking a little bit of risk in the market. But if your primary income comes from something as risky as a small business and you get it to the point where you can start to take money out of it, it's very appealing to be able to squirrel it away into something super safe. But if there's opportunities or problems, you've still got access. So it's like this flexible option. I mean, that's what got me excited about it when I started to learn about it initially.
Well, and you can't with other assets. I couldn't invest in a real estate deal that my office I that is my I'm the tenant of. It would be kind of self dealing or whatever they say on the codes there. Whereas with a life insurance policy, I used my life insurance policy to buy my office, that cash value to be a tenant of myself, basically. Whereas you couldn't have done that in the other system, right?
It takes a layer of regulation right off of everything.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you guys have well, actually, do you want to give me an example of one of your clients maybe and how they've taken advantage of their policy that you've helped them set up?
Trying to think of a good one. You got a good one right off?
Well, I was thinking actually one of Brandon's clients that I think when we met, he had two or three
Yeah.
rental properties, was working a good job, pretty stable. I think in something medical related. Um, and over the last 5 years or so of them working together, he's gotten to over 20 doors and been able
38,
to
38 doors.
okay, over 30 doors and be able to leave that job, have that passive income from real estate. And he did it all with um, his bank and yourself type policies. And I think, he's young, right? If, you were talking about the fire movement earlier, that's kind of, there's real estate fire too, right? Like plenty of real estate investors, that's kind of their plan. Um, and we look forward to as he's ready to sell those properties. How do we, get him into even more income, or if he wants to just sell them as a whole, business to somebody else. That I meet so many young real estate investors who are looking for properties to buy that are already, there's for sure it's gonna be cash flowing. And then I talk to a 70-year-old, it's like, I've got all these properties, I don't want them anymore, but I want the income. What do I do? And it's like there's so much available to have fun in the real estate sector for businesses that then we can see something like that happen with this guy, one of Brandon's clients. I'm sharing the story partly because they did an interview that's about to go live on our YouTube channel, so we're allowed to share now. We take privacy seriously, but I'm excited to now share his story with other business owners. Be like, okay, how could you do the same thing he did, but go from one business with 5 employees to maybe one business with 50, or two or three businesses with 10 each, right? Or like, what does this look like? A great case study. We've been doing this for 7.5 years. The best stories are yet to come. We're going to keep, helping people figure this out.
And I would say on him, and what I would say to the audience is know your numbers. So my client knew his numbers. When is it a good deal time to buy a house, and when is it not a good deal, right? And a lot of people go into business or buy businesses, and they don't know how to read a business valuation, or don't have people like you to help figure out if it's a good deal or a bad deal. He knows how, and he was like at one point, I think about 3 years ago, saying, I think I want to buy a franchise. And I was like, what are you thinking? That you should not do that. And he's like, why? I was like, because you know your numbers and you've dialed this system in. This is where you should go. And he's like, oh, you're right. And then he like skyrocketed there. I was like, you're gonna have to learn a whole new business, and is it gonna work? Do your valuation if you want, but that's just my 2 cents. And he's like, I'm really glad. And I'm like, this is because you know your numbers. You don't just buy, and you stress test those things too. What I think a lot of business owners is they don't know their numbers. They just abdicate it to somebody else and say, my tax guy will deal with it. I'm like, well, one, they're not your financial planner, they're your tax guy. And two, you should know those at least on a high level. That's why I don't want to just say, here, hire a CFP or a CFO, but understand maybe you have a CFO, but you should know how to read a balance sheet.
There's a certain amount of speculation that goes on in business too, where
Mhm.
people are just kind of like they think something's going to work and they jump in with both feet, and then if it does work, they just that behavior gets reinforced.
Yeah.
I've met those people before. Um, but yeah, I'm fully agreeing with what you're saying. Like you've got to know your numbers and know what you're getting involved with. Um, you guys have both read The Business Fortress. So
Mhm.
what parts of the book most resonated with you that you thought were valuable with takeaways for business owners?
Yeah, I would say one is beginning with the end in mind, like understanding there's more than just life insurance here. You talk about key man insurance and other parts that are there, and to if you want to exit, even start planning the seeds now. And some of those things, I mean, I know it, you know it. It's almost like common knowledge. Most business owners, I've sent it to 30 business owners. They don't know this stuff, right? They know,
And just for everyone paying attention, it's not a book about why you should buy life insurance.
no.
It's a book about how to build a more resilient business that can survive problems. And
Hmm.
so we Mark and I, when we wrote the book, we said, you know what, we do not want a bunch of one-star reviews on Amazon that say these guys are trying to sell us insurance. So it really is a book about building a better business. We talk about all the different types of tools that someone might use across the whole array, and yes, the whole life insurance policies designed the bank on yourself way is one of them. But it really is just filled with stuff about how to make your business less risky, more
Hmm.
resilient, and better able to survive the ups and downs, which, you know, unforeseen downturns seem to happen pretty commonly these days.
Yes. One of my friends, his Perry Marshall, he says black swan events, they happen regularly, and those are like those things that we can't predict or know. We had one that was a black swan event, hyper local to our coffee shop. And a lot of those things happen. And so we want to be able to be prepared for that. And so, but also knowing how cash flow works. And that's something that you talked about a lot, is like understanding how the mechanics of that work. What is a buyer going to look at? Not just you as a seller, but what's the buyer going to be looking for?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the whole part 1 of the book doesn't mention life insurance at all. And if people are like, I never want life insurance, read part 1 at least. I think you'll get a lot out of it, particularly the chapter about balance sheets that so many
Yeah.
businesses run off the P&L, and that's so misleading that that's why when we ask for reports from people, we always ask for a P&L and a balance sheet. And particularly if we can get 2 balance sheets or a comparison of the balance sheet, it tells so much more about their business
And
than
you
the
probably
P&L
get a
does.
bit of resistance about the balance sheet,
Yeah,
right? Like people
100%.
probably say, "Why do you need to see it?"
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that often they have errors. When
Yep.
when people see it themselves, they probably are like, "Well, that's paid off, and I don't have this anymore." Like, because people don't maintain it the way they maintain the income statement.
Right. And then the bottom of the balance sheet, that's my favorite part where it has like the owner's retained equity or the owner's distributions or the owner's contributions. There's so much, at least when I'm working with my tax professional, that we get to have fun with there to make sure that we're funding policies appropriately, reinvesting in the business appropriately from those policies, things like that too. So yeah, if people don't know how great their balance sheet is and how to use it strategically, your chapter on that is mwah, very good.
So speaking of balance sheets, let's go back to debt because you have seen a lot of people's balance sheet, as you're saying, over the last few years. Can you tell me from your point of view in talking to these small business owners and seeing their balance sheet, like to what degree do you see people having a lot of debt in their businesses? You
Oh
you
yeah,
mentioned earlier about the people with the big SBA loan. Like tell me a little bit about what you're seeing.
yeah, a lot of that EIDL and SBA loans both, and the debt payments are huge on them. Um, the and that, yeah, eats away at all the profit and doesn't, ever, it goes down really slowly because they're amortized for so long. And the um and actually, it probably 4 to 5 years ago, they were manageable because interest rates were much lower. Now we're
Yeah.
seeing SBA loans with 11% interest rates. That's not sustainable.
It
And
changes everything, especially if they bought the business with a plan for a certain payment and then it grew that way. I'm meeting a lot of people who've had to cut their own salaries to be able to afford their debt service.
I think that's happening a lot. I think there's a lot of what I see out in the world is we're hyping up, oh, how much I brought in, not the whole top line, and they're like, I'm a 7, 8, 9 figure business, and I see what people say on TikTok and YouTube, and I'm like, yeah, most of it's not real. And you see their business, and I'm like, you're close to bankruptcy. And what I like about our policies is at least, you know, they're not on the dialysis machine of needing more capital. And that's what we want to try and do is help. How do we help them not be on the banks making more money off of them running a unhealthy business, because that's what's happening, and they keep charging it up, and they then need to take another loan to keep on the machine, and they wonder why they're not happy. I'm like, well, because you're on the dialysis machine, and from every dollar you make, 20 cents on the dollar goes, and that's bigger. We already have a crisis of debt personally. It's even crazier on the business side. And
Yeah.
is there a fix for that? Absolutely. Does it happen overnight? Nope. But you need to start thinking that way.
So I'll make one point about debt, and then I'll make another point about social media. My point about debt is that I've met a lot of business owners who have gotten into business, whether through starting or buying a business, and they'll take that big SBA loan to get into business. And their plan at that point is they're thinking, oh, it's this buy, refinance, leverage, repeat, or whatever they learned from the real estate seminar on the at the weekend.
Yeah.
And they'll get into their first business, and their plan is to grow the business, pay down the debt, and then grow again by taking on another big loan to expand or whatever. The vast majority of people who start on that plan, by the time they pay off the first loan, if they're still in business, their plan has completely changed. They then say, I'm never getting into debt again. I don't want to sign another big $1 million loan. I'm going to run this business, and if I have opportunities to grow that I can finance out of my own cash flow or whatever, or maybe they've accumulated wealth through a vehicle like what you guys are doing with the life insurance policies, they'll be like, I'll do it under my own control when I control the payback and I control the flow of funds and I control the liquidity. But I'm not going to go live with that huge shadow of debt over me again. And I've just had so many people over the course of time express that to me in different ways. And it's had an impact on me, especially when I was writing those chapters, because I'm like, some of the people that are going to read this book, they have not lived enough to understand what it's like. You know, when you are 3, 4 years into this loan and maybe things aren't going as well as they should, and then you realize, oh my God, I got to cut what I take out of the business in order to make this debt service because I've had this downturn, and maybe I can't get the kids the Christmas gifts that I want to, and you struggle through and you get to the other side, and but then you remember those times. You know,
Yeah.
you remember the lean times, and it really changes the way that you interact with the world. And uh, with respect to social media, I cannot share the names, but I'm friends with someone who does podcast editing, and he edits the podcast of one of these people that's on social media talking about his 8-figure business all the time. And this guy haggled back and forth for 3 weeks to try to save $5 an episode off his podcast editing. And if you're running an 8-figure business and you're trying to save, $260 a year by saving $5 a week off your podcast editing, it tells me a lot about that 8-figure business. And so take everything you see online with a grain of salt for all of you that are listening. Um, if something, what's the old adage? If something is free, you're the product.
Yep.
Remember that. Yeah.
I think that's a huge thing. And then also don't try and keep up with the Joneses. Like a lot of these business owners they have this lifestyle and they're still doing it. And so then their business is in debt. And so then they still want that lifestyle. And so they end up on the personal side getting it mixed up too. And they're like, well, yeah, but we're used to going to private school and all this other stuff. And I'm like, well, maybe you need to like live within your means. And that's why, again, our book is thinking about cash flow and the savings and doing it. We don't have to live large all the time.
Yeah.
Still
Yeah,
good.
and I see business owners get into this trouble with respect to capital expenditures. So you get into a small business and maybe it's got some relatively new equipment and the cash flow is good and your lifestyle expands to live off that cash flow. And then all of a sudden you need to buy $100,000 truck and you can't afford it because you spend too much personally. That's something
Mhm.
that I've run into as well. This has been a wonderful conversation. I'm glad you guys stopped by today. You want to let everyone know the stuff that you guys are working on and where people can find you if they're interested to learn more. I know that you guys also host a podcast where you just talk about the financial issues with respect to business owners.
Yeah, thanks for having us, David. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to share our story and hopefully inspire some people that are listening or watching. We're Wealth Wisdom Financial Podcast. You can find us on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we're at Wealth Wisdom FP, as in financial podcast, wealthwisdomfp.com.
Yep. And if you want to learn more on the profit first side, go to Wealth Wisdom FP and say if you schedule a call with us and want to do profit first talk or like help set up to sell the business with David. I don't know. We would love to help with that.
Yeah, that would be great. This has been awesome. And if people want to learn more about what we're talking about when we talk about these bank on yourself whole life insurance policies, over at newbankingsolution.com, it's just a simple landing page, but it's got 7 different videos and interviews that I've done with Mark Willis that just talk about this concept and how it works and how it compares to other things. And uh, you know, it's something to consider. I've done it myself, as I said, and I have yet to meet anyone who's done it who regrets it. So I every time the stock market goes down, I sleep like a baby.
I have to say, I have met people that have regretted it. It's because they worked with the wrong life insurance agent.
Or
And
they
they
didn't
might
get the right kind of product.
they didn't get the right
Yep.
kind of product or they weren't coached in how to use it. That was one of the things we loved about working with Mark as his clients, and one of the things he taught us super well was it's not just about getting the policy started, but it's the ongoing use of it and knowing, we found somebody, they end up canceling their policy because of a huge tax bill. They didn't know they could borrow from the policy to pay their tax bill because their agent never told them. It's like, oh, they canceled that policy for no reason, right? And they regret it to this day because they thought it was the life insurance's problem, not the agent's problem that sold it to them.
The and the thing is the longer you hold these things, the more efficient they become because there is a certain cost of insurance that gets tied up more in the front end of it.
Yeah.
I know that with my own policies, as each year goes by, like there's a greater and greater efficiency of turning that premium into greater cash value and benefits. So, yeah, I someone tried to sell me one of these policies back when I was in my 20s, and they did a really poor job of explaining it to me, because I didn't buy it. But now that I understand what I know, I really wish I had, because I would have had one basically 25 years earlier. It would have been enormous, the difference in benefit to me.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure people know you can't just go to your local, life insurance agent that works for, XYZ insurance company and buy this. You need to work with the right people who know what they're doing. And Mark is definitely one of those.
And you
Yeah.
are, and
And
me.
and us too.
And the Neelys.
Yeah.
All right. Well, perfect. I want to thank you very much. And we'll see you next time. And wealthwisdomfinancialfp.com is the place where people can find you online and your show. And I've been tuning into your show. You've been having some interesting conversations about college planning, which I know is an expensive thing too, and how business owners in particular can do a better job at doing that too. So that's a takeaway that I've gained from listening to your show recently.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you later.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
So, how can you learn more about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium sized businesses? Easy. Go over to my blog site, davidcbarnett.com, where you can learn more about me and how I work with my clients. You can learn more about my books and courses that I've prepared for you. You can find out how to subscribe to my email list, the YouTube playlists, and more. There's literally hundreds of hours of content there, all for free, and I'd love for you to be my guest. Special thanks go to Mark Willis at Lake Growth Financial, today's video sponsor. Mark helps people better manage their personal and business finances through the Bank on Yourself insurance strategy. This is something I've done personally and I've seen others use it successfully for years. Go to newbankingsolution.com to find all the interviews I've done with Mark and learn more about the advantages of these programs. While there, sign up for a free consultation to learn what this solution might look like for you.